We welcome the public to the Waunakee Community School District Co-Curricular Committee. The co-curricular activities are voluntary and school-sponsored programs which are largely occur outside the instructional day. Co-curricular activities are purposeful and complement academic programming occurring beyond the traditional classroom. The Waunakee Community School District is committed to providing our students the opportunity to fully participate in curricular, extracurricular, student services, recreational, or other programming or activities without impairment related to student sex, race, religion, national origin, ancestry, color, creed, marital status or parental status, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical, mental, emotional, or learning disability or handicap. It is my pleasure to call this co-curricular meeting to order. The committee members in attendance are Randy Gutenberg, Superintendent of the Waunakee Community School District, Brian Borowski, who is on by Zoom, is the high school principal, Aaron May, Athletic Director, and the two, is Judy up there? No, not yet. Okay, two of the Board of Education members, Dave Betcher and Brian Hafer, with Judy Engelbretson coming on just a little bit late. For clarity for the public, there will be two outcomes probably from this meeting. One will be to ask for further information back from the administration, and two, request that the motion goes to the full board. No concrete information will be not discussed, but solidified tonight through our voting. So can I get a motion to approve the current agenda?
So moved.
Okay. We do have some public comments. They will last for 3 minutes. Dave Betcher will keep track of the time, and at 2:45, he will raise his hand to let you know that you've got 15 seconds to wrap up. Any questions? All right, Cole, can we have you step forward up to the beginning of the tables and introduce yourself? And if you're a student, what grade you're in?
I am Cole Gasho. I'm in 8th grade right now, and I'm from the Waunakee Middle School. The reason I'm for the mountain biking team is because just last year, I joined the Niagara Composite team, and I felt that it was a good experience for me because I was able to meet some new people and make some great friends. I feel like that'd be great for the Waunakee community and just all people in general, because it's nice just to have something that we all like and be able to do that together and just talk about that together.
You don't have to use the whole 3 minutes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Cole. The next, Andrea. Introduce yourself and your address in town here.
I'm Andrea DeLugos, 1706 Sewanee Circle in Waunakee, and I'm the parent of a former participant of my composite team, and am in support of adding a team from the Waunakee School District. The program that my son participated in was probably one of the most encouraging sporting activities that I witnessed in my time as a parent, and my son was involved in a number of different sports. The team welcomes athletes of all capabilities and has opportunities for everybody to participate at the level that they feel comfortable. There's a number of race weekends. It's not overwhelming. The race weekends are just so amazingly positive. Almost like a party atmosphere. Sometimes the families come the night before and pre-ride the course, camp out, and then stay to encourage and cheer on everybody who participates during the race day. The coaches have been universally some of the nicest people I've ever met. I think that it has been just a positive experience for our family, and I think that there are groups of kids that may not want to participate in team, like a traditional team sport. And this is kind of that nice blend of it's an individual activity with a team component, and an opportunity to be coached and advanced at the skill level that fits with your needs. So I am really in support of it. I think it's a great program. It's been growing leaps and bounds throughout the state, and I think it would be a great contribution to Waunakee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily Meyer?
My name is Emily Meyer. I'm actually a teacher with the school district. I'm also a former student for the Waunakee Community School District as well. I currently live in Cross Plains, which is one of the others that is involved in the composite for Blackhawk. And I'm actually really excited to be bringing something to this committee that's really positive and a fantastic opportunities. I know you guys have been faced with a lot of agenda items that have been quite the opposite this past year. So I'm really excited about just discussing NICA with the school district and having it as an opportunity for our kids, because it's like, I feel bad following you because you did such a great job explaining what a wonderful program it is, but it's inclusive. It's incredibly inclusive for all of our students. It involves kids that are ages 6th grade through 12. So there's a development aspect there and a community building aspect that lasts a long time. I'm actually a coach. This is my first year coaching. It was my first year ever mountain biking as well. And it was such an overwhelmingly positive experience that I'm now trying to get my level 3 coaching certification so I can continue this program. A couple other things that I wanted to take note of is that there are 60,000 or so student athletes across the country that participate in this program already. So it's not like it's something new. It's something that our district is adopting that many other schools have already done. A lot of work has already been done for the district, including all of the things that were mentioned, races, coaching development, that sort of thing. And then it also is just an incredibly team-oriented, but also individual opportunity sport. So yeah, I think that covers most of the points I wanted to bring up. I do know many of our students already participate in the sport, and it'd be awesome to have like an official way for them to participate with their school district in mind, because I came into class this past fall and talked to my students and asked, hey, what did you do this summer? And I had 3 or 4 kids in my classes that said, hey, I was mountain biking out at Quarry Ridge. And I was like, that's a lost opportunity for those kids to connect with their classmates and their peers through this amazing program. So if we can have this as an official school program, market it, promote it within our community, that would be fantastic. Great opportunity for our school district.
Thank you.
Thanks, Em.
John?
Thank you, guys. So the 5-minute approach I have is a sheet that kind of explains the Waunakee School Districts Association with the National Group NICA and with Wisconsin High School Cycling League.
John, could you maybe say who you are? Because
Yeah.
anybody watching the
Okay.
recording.
John Kramer. I'm John Kramer. I've submitted the application for this co-curricular activity, and I've just handed out again how the district can associate with our Wisconsin High School Cycling League, which is a part of the national group, which has multiple states, called the National Interscholastic Cycling Association. So I had previously given some of the board members information along the same lines that Em stated, that it's a co-ed group, all abilities, nobody's left out, 6th through 12th grade, anybody can join. That's really the main part that I want to promote here with that. No kid is ever benched. Every kid plays. There's no downtime. We're all included. One of the great things that I got out of this is going to be my 5th year coaching, and I've been racing bikes for 10 years now, and I've been riding bikes for 47 years. It hasn't stopped. All of these kids here, their moms and dads can ride with them as coaches and be involved with their kids in this program. It's amazing. It's really created a bond with my kids as well. So that's really all I have to say.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for letting me do that.
AJ?
Hi there, my name is Andrea Geary. I'm a senior at Waunakee High School. I've been on the team the past 2 years, and they're honestly the most fun I've had in a week or a fall sport throughout my years of middle school and high school. What I really like about mountain biking, it's a lot of fun. You're working with your teammates, but it's also an individual sport. So we're able to practice together, but then once it actually comes down to the race, those practices, they've all been working towards improving yourself, and then you really have that opportunity to show how much you've grown. And it's also promoted a large sense of leadership because I joined my junior year. I was already pretty experienced in mountain biking, but there's a lot of younger riders there that still were learning how to mountain bike and really learning how to race. So it allowed me to take up a leadership role and help bring up a community of mountain bikers. And I think that's really important because with that wide range of people that are in that sport, the sixth graders are just getting into it, but then as they progress throughout their years of mountain biking, they can really become leaders. And I think that's a really important part of the sport, of kind of giving back and helping other people do it. So, thank you.
Thanks, AJ. Samuel?
I'm Samuel Anderson. I'm in 8th grade, and I started mountain biking this past year with NICA. And I was just really impressed with. I was really impressed with how it was able to bring everyone together, and I really loved how it was just going out with friends and riding and improving, and great experience overall. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And August?
Hello, my name is August Johnson, and I actually joined the team with AJ as my sophomore year. And I haven't really mountain biked before, and when I went to the first practice, I didn't know what to expect, but after I got into it, it was a lot of fun, and the coaches were really nice, and I just improved throughout my 2 years on the team. And I look forward to improving, and it would be really nice to finally be as a high school sport.
Thank you. Thanks to all the students who stepped up. We are not as scary without these masks, so we were smiling and listening. So,
Would it be inappropriate with the number of people who are here in person to move that to the top of the agenda and deal with that issue first? That way they can hear the discussion and see where it goes.
Thank you, guys.
all right, so I'm going to turn this over to Aaron and Randy if you want to talk about the consideration of the Waunakee Warrior Mountain Bike Club.
Yeah, I don't mind starting, Aaron. In your packet, board members, you'll see the guidelines and the proposal that John Kramer submitted. This is an item that he felt would be a great addition to our school district to, as you can see, the testimony of our students, to encourage them to be active and be part of a school and create identity for a sport that they're already participating in. I think from our perspective, it would be a great addition to our district to be able to do so. John's application does not request any district funds or paid advisorship, but does include that there's the ability to fundraise for different things as they move forward over time. From what I heard here tonight, John, if you can just clarify, you put forth that it was for 6th through 12th grade, or all the way from 6th grade up. Is that kind of how you envisioned this, or was this kind of viewed as a high school club, or kind of an all-encompassing club that just had connections to? That was a question I had, and I see you have 6 through 12, but I just want you to clarify that, because we don't have many clubs like that. Most of them are very specific to like a middle school or a high school. This one has a little bit greater reach. So just want to see kind of what your vision is for that.
That's correct. 6th grade through 12th grade, anybody is invited to join. the Wisconsin High School Cycling League has been pre-pandemic, really the racing portion of our groups. We all can race 6th grade and up with the Wisconsin High School Cycling League, the points and the, not really sure if the points are high school for the racing components. And in fact, with Andrea's son, Bern, who is on our team, now races with his college team in Colorado. So there is a growth component with that, but yes, it's inclusive of 6th through 12th grade, to answer your question.
Great, thank you. Aaron, do you have anything to add from your perspective and looking at this from an activity piece that's being added? I know Brian Borowski, you're on this call as well. So if either one of you have anything to add with regards to the recommendation or the proposal in front of the committee.
Yeah, this is Aaron. Just a couple points I want to make. Right now, I think where we envision the bike club starting, just in terms of the co-curricular code, would be as a category C activity, which is along the lines of our fishing club and some other clubs where we have sort of non-paid advisorships, but they're able to raise funds and able to sort of use the Waunakee Community School District name as part of that fundraising process. You know, Randy, you did point out that most of our clubs are either specific to middle school or high school. That's true. We do have a couple groups, though, that do have what we might call feeder programs at the middle school level. And that would be like our ski and snowboard team. We only sponsor ski and snowboard at the high school level, but middle school students are able to sign up with Wyshera and ski and snowboard. And then when they do become high school age, they are able to then join our team. So there is some things like that. Similar connection with our equestrian team, where they do have competitions and events for middle school age students. They're not officially part of our team in terms of when we do our reporting out in terms of participation numbers, grade checks, school behaviors, and having to follow our code, but they do feed into our teams then when they come to the high school level. So yes, this would be a somewhat unique situation, but it's not necessarily an unprecedented situation to have sort of a 6 through 12 club along these lines. I definitely think it's going to hit a population of kids that is unique and has been underserved at Waunakee in terms of sort of the activities and athletics that we have to offer. Thank you.
I guess from my perspective, when we brought in the equestrian club a number of years ago, this was a piece that really fit a group of kids that were already doing the sport. They were very passionate about it, and I see a very similar parallel to this one.
Is the equestrian team a C?
Equestrian team, I believe, is an A because they're able to receive, they're able to letter in that as a sport at the high school level.
Would we want to do that the same with this? I mean, if we're going to have them do fall competitions, that would seem that there is a competition aspect to it. And heck, I think a mountain bike gets a letter as much as riding a horse.
I can speak to that a little bit. NICA does have a system in which earning points at the races, you can earn a certain number of points, and they do have it already like kind of set up and ingrained in the NICA program for a varsity letter is earning a certain number of points over the course of your career.
And I mean, unless for some reason the coaches felt they didn't want it to be at that level, but I would think you'd want to be able to do that.
I agree with that. Yeah, I've spoken with our Wisconsin High School Cycling League director, and there are definitely channels to facilitate the lettering in the school for sure.
Is there some reason, Aaron, that it would be more appropriate to be a C than an A?
Well, we wanted to start in the category C, one to see when it and where it progresses to. If we put it immediately into a category A activity, it immediately comes with a lot more oversight and regulations to our students. Our sixth grade students have never had to worry about their academic grades, their attendance, or their school behavior in terms of their ability to participate in something. Same with, necessarily some of our seventh and eighth graders, we would have to address that with our co-curricular code. Whereas category C activities, they don't have those same type of school regulations in order to participate in this club. But and I would say all of our category A activities have paid coaching positions, so there would be a budgetary impact, and we would have to increase then my budget in terms of payroll, etc. We also, when it's a category A activity, we then provide the transportation, or we pay for transportation for events. I know they haven't brought it up or discussed it, but it definitely would have a much larger budgetary impact than in terms of how we deal with the club if it's in a category A.
There's a couple of ways I think we can deal with it. We could consider it as a category C just to get it started and kind of review it and bring it back at a future point to see how you want to react to it. One of the things we've done with equestrian, as Aaron said, it does have the other feeder programs, but those aren't part of the school, from my understanding. Those are part of the equestrian community that have Waunakee students part of it, but as part of our solely focus at the high school that then has the ability to do letter and do some of those pieces. With it being through from sixth grade on forward, I think it would just be trying to decipher how do you want to address that, and do you want to I'm assuming what you're asking for is wanting to create that student identity at the school within the district for those kids 6 to 12. But then as Aaron is sharing, it's just kind of been differentiating as far as the part that's from a competitive piece that's falls into the category A aspect. I think the piece when we look at with transportation, Aaron, we don't provide any transportation to equestrian, that's on their own. So I can see this being a very similar way. But we do provide a coach, which that's just part of the recommendation that would come forward that we could consider. So if there's a paid position because of the supervision as it being a more competitive piece, we could consider that. So there's a little bit of a nuance here with that 6 to 12. That's probably the piece that I guess I didn't necessarily digest through when you were talking here today.
I don't have any doubt that this will take off to be a solid program, but we also have other programs too, clubs that we have like a 2 or 3 year window to make sure the club stays before we start funding it. So I sort of see this as that, but I have no doubt that this is when we started in C, it will evolve into
I just feel bad for any high school who's about to become a high school senior with their fall competition, and then they won't be able to. Maybe since your clinics are in summer, hopefully we could consider that by the start of this next school year. Maybe bring it back in July with the idea. The possibility of, I understand that going into those younger grades and putting it under the whole code, maybe it could be under that just for the 4 high school grades. And then, down at 6th grade, we're not going to be having them chase academics or middle school, but we could divide it up that way.
That's what I was thinking.
It could be a participatory club, 6th grade through 8th grade, and that is from high school up. We can treat it similarly to how we do the equestrian club. Does that create any issues for you, Aaron, if you split it 6 through 8 as a category C, but the high school one becomes more of a category A if we considered it that way?
Well, I mean, it would be the only, just with the 6th graders, it would be the only club that we offer in that manner. It would really be a new carve out, something we haven't done before. So that's definitely something we would have to consider. With the 7th and 8th graders, I would then include it in the middle school co-curricular code. So I would expect if we're going to keep it as a category A, just like our other sports, whether it's middle school football or volleyball or track and field, that we would want our 7th and 8th graders then to be following the academic and attendance policies that the other middle school athletes would be following.
So do we want to start it as a C now with the idea that hopefully over the summer we might consider and look at moving it to A?
Are you guys okay with that? We start it there to get it started, see what our participation is. We can kind of work out some of these things, see what the numbers are, and we bring it back for the fall.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. Get it seeded, and then we can look at recategorization at a later date. That would not be
Right.
that would be something we've done with other groups and other clubs too. So it's not a new thing.
I think we could make that as our recommendation, start it off as a C to be brought back by the coaches for reconsideration as they get established. Okay.
I'll make a motion to start it as a C with reconsideration this summer. to changing it.
I'll second that motion, Dave.
Thank you.
The motion,
To recommend to the board.
full board.
Yeah.
Okay. Second. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. 3-0. Move it to the full board for consideration on Monday.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for coming down.
Okay. I want to acknowledge that we have a Zoom room full of coaches. So thank you for attending. As we run these committee meetings, really, Aaron and Randy will present the overall information regarding what we will be discussing. If a coach has a question, please acknowledge in some way that you have a question or a comment. But you're really here as resources to really fine point any questions that we may have in again, making decisions or passing things on to the full board. So Aaron and Randy, if you want to take it from here.
Let me start off here and then I'll turn the report piece over to you. We have 2 items on the agenda tonight that we want to cover. First of all, we felt it would be prudent to bring back to the committee really an update on how things have gone with our fall activities and then our winter activities. So what Aaron has is a report with regards to participation and some of the academic achievement data from our students who've been able to participate. I'd like to start off there. I know a pertinent question for our board members is also kind of how have we navigated all of the COVID pandemic issues, and I think Aaron and I can speak to that narratively. We did not put that into reports based on just depending on how you break those numbers out, it can get to be identifying for students. So we wanted to just talk about that in general as far as what we've seen. But Aaron, I'm going to bring up the fall activities update, which I believe has some of the winter pieces, and then I'll let you kind of walk us through it and I'll try to navigate. So why don't you start off and I'll just scroll through as we move.
Sure. Thank you, Randy. You guys can see the information there, but I just want to walk you back to late July, early August. And at that time, as a board, you guys approved us to move forward with cross country, girls tennis, girls golf, one act at the high school level and at the middle school to offer some type of skills activities for volleyball, cross country, and football. And then save or reserve our medium and high risk fall sports for what the WIAA is calling their alternate fall season. So in the fall, we were able to have, if you see there the numbers, we had 462 students, grades 7 through 12, participate in category A activities. Those are really the numbers we were tracking this fall. And just I have some percentage breakdowns there. 60% of those students were females. And you can see the kind of that 462, the grade percentage breakdown. We had a significant number of middle school students participate in our cross country, our skills, our 6-week skills sessions for football and volleyball. I think parents were really glad to have the kids sort of out of the house. But I think it was really helpful for those kids one, to reconnect with their peers in person, but also to reconnect with some of the adults that have been part of their life for a long time. So we heard nothing but positive things there. We had some very strong coaches. Our coaching staffs at both the middle school and high school for those sports have been around for a long time. And as a result, they were very good at sort of enforcing and establishing practices and rules to make sure we were falling within the Dane County expectations, but also sort of the expectations of our community and of the school board. So they did a tremendous job there for those kids. The winter activities, just as a reminder, I mean, we had a number of board meetings about those, but we did have boys and girls basketball, dance, gymnastics, boys hockey, ski and snowboard, swim, wrestling, and forensics, all at the high school. They're all still currently ongoing. At the middle school, we have sort of a skills session for basketball, and for wrestling, it's more of what I'll call a skills session, or almost like a conditioning session that the kids do. And again, currently we have 378 students participating in these Category A activities. Just over a third of them are female, and you can also see the grade breakdown. And again, we've got a lot of long-standing coaches in those different sports who overall have done a very good job of communicating the expectations with regards to the Dane County Public Health rules, and I think our school rules. But you can see our participation there. A little bit lower at the 7th and 8th grade level, but the high school level has been fairly strong. And then if we can scroll down, I had Becky Castle run a report. This is through first semester of this year. So this is the semester grades, and this is the average GPA for those Category A sports that went on and this year. So you can see the students involved in those things definitely were high achieving. I can't say it's a causation or a causal factor that we offered these things and these students were definitely achieving in the classroom, but there's always been a high correlation between involvement in extracurriculars and success in the classroom. And I think this just goes to show, just going to point out a couple sports there, but if you look at girls basketball, their average GPA is a 3.78. I joked with the coach. I said I'd hate to be the one girl on that team that got the B that brought that average down, but it's a really strong grade point average there. And our girls cross country team, the varsity team, if you just take our 5 varsity runners, they actually were named first team academic all state. They were the top GPA in the state for for girls cross country. Their average GPA was a 4.0. If you look at the cross country GPA, that's for all the boys and girls there. But if you just take the 5 varsity cross country girls runners, their average GPA was a 4.0. So that's some pretty outstanding grades there for those kids.
Aaron, where does that fall from last year? Sorry, it's still your turn.
It's speaking in sort of a broad generalization, Brian, these grades are slightly stronger overall. These GPAs are slightly higher overall than they were last year, but I can tell you our average GPA for all sports last year was a 3.37. So that's still a pretty strong number. But if you I don't know and I don't have the breakdown per sport, but I do remember that being our overall average GPA for athletes in the 1920 school year.
Let me take a shot at that, Brian. I did take a look at that yesterday, and I just thought I had it in front of me, but I didn't. When I go back to a previous year, I think our low from the previous year was like a 2.9% for one of the sports, and our high and our range was somewhere around that 3.8. So from what I saw when I went sport by sport, some were slightly higher, some were slightly lower, but generally they were in a similar range. proud of the kids for how they've held their grades up here, and I see it as relatively consistent with what we saw in the past.
If you want to just scroll the second page, I just threw some of these numbers together to give you kind of an idea. In the fall, we had 37 events that we had to schedule and coordinate. Transportation wasn't really an issue in the fall because we weren't allowed to leave Dane County until the tournament series. And we also had 31 adults working with those 462 students. So we had a good group of kids and a decent amount of events we were able to offer our student athletes in the fall. In the winter there, you can see right now we've got 59 regular season sporting events that we've scheduled and coordinated, which I think is a testament to our coaching staffs and everybody working really hard, because when the Badger Conference canceled the winter season, that pretty much blew up our conference schedules. And at that time in mid to late October, I did tell my non-conference opponents, athletic directors, that at this time I was unsure about Waunakee's ability to compete or host, and we kind of broke all those contracts. So those 59 of sporting events were sort of rescheduled or created from scratch when you guys gave us the go-ahead in what was that, early to mid-November. So those were kind of some interesting times there. We've coordinated 55 buses, and we currently now have 32 coaches working with our student athletes in the different sports. This last table is the raw numbers of participation. I gave you the percentages up top, but here, these are just the raw numbers. And if you see those, like if you look at one act where it says like 6/1, that's male and female. So that was freshman year. We had 6 females and 1 male student in that grade participating. So if you see that in the table, that's what that means. But we had some pretty strong participation rates. We saw an uptick in a couple sports, but no real big fluctuations in participation. Nobody went way down and nobody ballooned way up. It was all fairly close to what you might say is the rolling average for participation in those different sports. And that's the end of the report.
Any questions on that initial data?
All right, why don't we move on to discuss the plans for the fall to spring sports and spring sports coming up.
And I think a springboard into that is kind of a building off of the report we just saw. And that relates to really a discussion about how have we been able to navigate COVID pandemic as we've been able to do our activities. Now, the board's aware of the type of communications that we've had to have as we have positive cases, and as we work with our coaches, our contact tracers. Aaron's been extremely involved, Kurt Ely in our student services office, with making sure that we are being very proactive and also following all the guidelines from public health with regards to quarantines, etc. Given the number of kids that we have participating, which is what you saw in the previous presentation, I feel we've done a great job. I give a lot of credit to our coaches, the plans that we've asked them to put in place in order to provide opportunities for the kids, working within the parameters that public health gives us, operating their practices and such, and then moving into the winter season, and the trust the board gave to move and participate out of county. Obviously, we've had some COVID incidents that we have to address, and that was a piece that I think we've expected. We've seen those fluctuations throughout the year, particularly as you've seen the ebb and flow of the burden of the disease within our community. I think that from a perspective of looking at it as we've been working through it, I've been very pleased with the numbers that we've seen, being able to get on top of them quickly, cooperation of the coaches and parents as those issues have come up. We've had to pause a few events as a result of it, but I think that's been for the positive as far as being able to maintain things moving forward. I also believe, and I don't want to get into a lot of specifics, some of the items that and COVID incidents would have most likely occurred even without us participating or traveling. So there's some of those pieces that are just part of contact that would have occurred or quarantine that would have occurred. And it just happens that kids were part of activities of where there was notifications impacted. But overall, I think that this has gone well. And again, I give credit to our coaches and our folks for really taking that extremely seriously and moving that forward. As we move into the discussion about fall to spring and spring sports, that's a piece that we're asking the board to take into consideration. I think that it was certainly a trust issue to allow us to move forward with what we did this winter. We feel it's gone overall very well. And what we're asking for consideration of is to give the same opportunities to our fall to spring and to our spring sports that we are able to provide to our winter athletes. Certainly, we have to follow similar protocols. We have to make sure that we are putting forth plans that address that. I have confidence that our coaches are going to be able to do that. And I know many of them are already working on them. You know, Pat, you reached out to me just with regards to things on football. I think your draft document's 20 pages long. So it's got, and I know that that's true to many of you who are looking at how you can navigate your programs as you move forward into the spring. So I guess tonight what we're really looking for is we wanted to bring this and be proactive, as Brian and I talked about this, to try to bring things in front of the board in a timely manner so we can plan accordingly. Get any questions answered that may exist, and then be able to provide direction in a manner that can move things forward. Aaron, if you can provide a little bit of timeline for the committee as far as when do first of all, if we can just define the fall to spring sports, and then also define kind of the timelines of when these fall to spring and then our traditional spring sports begin, just so we can get a picture of kind of where we're at sitting here in early February and when some of these activities are taking place.
Sure. So our first sort of our alternate fall season sports this year are football, soccer, volleyball, and girls swim. Now, if some of you may recall, back in August, we did, or you did as a board, approve girls swim to go in the fall. At that time, with the group restrictions and the Dane County restrictions, myself and the coach at the time made the decision to move to the alternate season for girls swim. Girls swim will be starting up here in February. And then we have in March 20th, I believe, is volleyball. And then we have football starting about the same time. And then we have soccer starting, I think, is our last one of the alternate seasons to start. I can pull up my dates here. I've got my calendar open.
Were there some starting like the 8th of March, somewhere in that time frame, early March?
Yeah, football is starting early March. Volleyball starts mid-March, early March at the same time. And then soccer is just a little bit after that. So we have for girls volleyball in the alternate season, they start at I guess technically it'd be the end of February. They can start practicing February 22nd. Their first meet would be the start of March there. So they've got about, little under a month to go. And then football date is just pulling it up here and got my dates here. March 8th is their first day. And then soccer is my last date here, and pull it up. is March 22nd that they start. So we have sort of things going in the next few weeks. Volleyball and girls swim starting off first, and then soccer and football starting in March. So we do have kind of a time crunch on some of these things to go. But I think our coaching staffs are prepared or have been preparing in terms of the rules and regulations when it comes to what we're going to be able to do within Dane County's expectations.
Great, thank you, Aaron. A couple things. I mean, that was part of why we wanted to have this committee now, was we know some of these are starting early and wanting to be prepared so that when they start, if there are the protocols and the plans that we have to administratively review and make sure are in compliance, that we can get those done accordingly and ahead of time. Just to talk a little bit about what's going on with public health, because I mean, that's a big part that's really impacted our ability as a district to implement different programs and how we're able to do it. The last order that came out had some very minor shifts. And I think just kind of looking at our screen here, it impacts probably track and swimming, I think, were the ones that got impacted on the last order. Because prior to that, you could only do single events for swimming, and now they've allowed you to do relays. For our track students, they were allowing single events, but not relays. And now under the last order, they're allowing really some of that contact via relays. So one of the pieces I've included in your packet was a document from the National Association of, I'm just going to balance two over. So I can show it.
I believe that was the National Federation of High Schools, their medical committee.
Yep, we got it. Let me just jump to that. Help me out here, Rebecca. Where did I go? Thank you. Thanks, that helps. This is a document that's relatively new. It came out, I believe, just this last week or within the last week or so. And it's a report from the National Federation of State High School Associations and their Sports Medicine Advisory Committee. And the reason I brought this piece forward is because they have some recommendations on what their findings are, generally given a desire to get away from kind of some of the tiering of sports as far as high, medium, and low risk, looking at them as a whole as far as what they've seen through participation, and then looking at some of the areas where they see the greatest occurrences with some of the COVID-19 spread being in some of the incidental social contact or other pieces that necessarily aren't associated with the actual playing of the activity. So I found that very interesting, but I was also informed as I had a conversation with public health this week that this is a document that they're taking a look at. That's why I brought it forward. Because we have a new public health order coming out next week. I was encouraged that they are looking at this type of a document and this type of feedback. And I have reason to believe that when the next order comes out early next week, there's going to be some leeway as far as what that may mean for how we're able to orchestrate, participate, and potentially organize some of our activities. Unfortunately, that's not coming out till next week. So I don't have that here tonight. And public health is pretty vague on exactly what those are going to be. But I wanted to bring that piece forward because I thought it at least is an informative aspect of some of the conversations that we're having. So I think tonight is really trying to just bring this conversation forward, be proactive on it from looking at what our experiences were for winter. And then if the committee is comfortable determining either any pieces of this that we want to bring forward to the board on Monday night for consideration, or as Brian, you and I have talked about, is there a point where we want to then hold an additional meeting at some point after we get the public health guidelines that we could finalize any pieces? So I don't want to bring it forward to the committee to have some discussion. I think Aaron and I have talked long enough. And certainly we have our coaches here, and I greatly appreciate them being here because if there's questions, particularly about your events, you're the best ones to be able to answer them.
I guess I'd like to ask any of the fall coaches that were moved to spring. You had contact days in the fall, do you, if the order does not change come next week or come by the start of your practices, can you prepare for competition season with those orders in place? Safely prepare your students. Go ahead, Ann.
So it's a quality question, as it requires 6 people on a side for volleyball, so that equals 12. From a organizational standpoint, and I've had discussions with Aaron about this, about splitting our roster, and that we have the ability to have the space once the field house is completed. It'll be a little bit of jockeying when it comes to the scheduling piece, but I think we can do it safely. It's not quite as, I mean, we can make it as game-like as we can make it for what we would be under as far as regulations go. I feel like a positive piece coming back to the contact days, it's worked out really well. We split by position and worked the court so that kids were specifically on a court, and we kept it that way and traced it that way. I felt like it went really well. The kids were very receptive. I think kids were very excited just to be there and to be around each other. And so we stayed to that 10 on a court, and we still accomplished a lot of things that we need to accomplish from our sport. So as far as what I can see, of course, once the field house is done, it'll make my life a lot easier, just because I have about 90 athletes that are going to be coming out for volleyball.
Thank you.
Just to back up, field house is in the coming weeks, so that should be done in time for some of those activities.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, no, from a soccer perspective, it's absolutely no issue for us. I mean, we'll obviously be able to train, outside. We look at probably 20 to 22 individuals on each of our 4 teams. And, within the guidelines that we currently have, we're readily able to do that from a, training from a physical conditioning standpoint. Obviously there's plenty of room. If we can get the snow cleared off of the turf field, then we'll have plenty of room for that. And then under the current restrictions in regards to spacing, quite frankly, it actually presents a very nice opportunity for us to try to get, the players to do what they should be doing, which is trying to keep away from other players and jumping into passing lanes and being able to move the ball. So I have no concern whatsoever about our ability to, within the current guidelines, even as they sit today, to do proper training for these guys to get them ready to play.
I can speak to girls swimming. We're just actually coming out of the boys swim season. So we've been actually doing the same things that we will continue to do with the girls swim season. The only thing that will be different for the girls swim season is it's now 30 swimmers as opposed to 17. So that obviously adds more groups to the practice schedule. But other than that, we're able to maintain our social distancing, and in the event that anyone would become ill, we won't have any close contacts because we're following all of the guidelines. So we are able to prepare, and we'll continue to do so.
Right. Thank you. Pat, I know you've got some struggles. Pat, you've probably got some struggles with preparing a little bit.
You're muted, Pat.
Yeah, it hasn't been real random for us. We've met with Dane County Public Health. We surveyed every school that played in the fall for best practices. We've met with the administrations from all the fall teams. We also met with our administration team, Dane County coaches that are in fall, Dane County football coaches that are playing the spring alternative. And we met with the Dane County athletic directors from the spring alternative. So we've researched it quite a bit. Football's got some uniqueness to what we have. First of all, the number of players. We have about 180 players on our roster. The facilities and kind of the moving around, there's a couple of issues there. But the bottom line is, in order for us to do what we do, we have to have some blocking and tackling It's critical to the safety. It's not like playing pickup basketball where you could probably space and get five guys out there and do some things. There's going to be, some things. Now, in the fall, we did that with modifications, and the modifications were masks. When we're within 6 feet, we had barriers. We had a number of protocols. We had no problems with anything. It was good. But the bottom line is we either need that order to be interpreted or changed where we can do some from a safety standpoint, to allow our kids to fundamentally be able to block and tackle and deal with the contact, because that's a critical aspect, obviously, to our game. And if not, we're going to need to be able to leave the county and practice there. And therein lies a little bit of a different situation because it's not a wrestling team or a basketball team. It's a large group of people. We'd be dealing with some busing and things like that. So our first hope, obviously, is for the Dane County Public Health to loosen the next order to allow us to do what we did in the fall. And oh, by the way, all those teams played in the fall. And it seems like the numbers were worse then when they were playing than they are now. Or if they're not going to allow that, then we're going to have to find some way to, move out of the county, Lodi, Fall River, which is sad with our facilities we have here, and that we have mitigated this situation in the fall and through the weight room and all the different things we've done. But that's for a different discussion. But anyways, if we're not allowed, that would be the elephant in the room. How are we going to safely be able to teach blocking, tackling, some of the fundamentals? We would modify it with shorter practice times. We would modify it, with like I said, limited. It's not junction boys. It's a limited kind of practice format in terms of contact, the masks, the barriers. We're outside. There's a number of things that make all the sense in the world, to be honest, to be able to do it. But we're going to need. I think we're a little bit unique with the size of our roster and some of the actual, kind of the essence of our sport to a certain extent. So that's kind of where we're at.
How many days would you expect if you needed to practice outside the county? How many days, and would you take the whole team, or would you split squads, some here and some out of county?
We would be able to do some of that. We're not talking about the lower levels, which would obviously be a big problem for us. We've brainstormed about, possible split rosters. We've brainstormed about an hour, but we'd probably need 2 days a week. It wouldn't be a full 2 hours. That's not how we practice anyway. We're into a lot of group things that are popping one to the next, great tempo. It's not like we're doing a lot of collisions and that type of thing anyway. But there needs to be that safety aspect. So I would answer your question by 2 times a week. And, the varsity team would probably be, roughly 80 kids. And then again, we still have to look at how we're going to deal with, 50 freshmen and roughly 50 sophomores. So, there's some numbers things there that are very real. We're definitely keeping our fingers crossed with that order, because that would make things a lot easier. Otherwise, there's going to be some complications for some kids, and they're not going to see the justice when they're, fall sports went off and everybody else has gone off and wrestling's going off. So we've got to figure out something.
Pat, reading that thing that Randy shared, I noticed obviously items 4 and 5 they talked about, which was masking and about the social contact, were the biggest problems. And that's exactly what our medical committee was saying, was that the sports activity itself wasn't causing the contact. It was the socializing of either the students after the activity or the spectators at the event were causing the vast amount of COVID incidents. If you went out of county, how would it be handled about spectators, or how would it be handled about the students themselves socializing after the activity, because that's where we've already had problems.
I think that's one of the huge advantages to us having these sports, you know, in our high school programs and not club. We're constantly, you know, whether it's up in the weight room, we have a sheet of announcements that social distance, mask, you know, don't be hanging out in groups, you know, over the holidays, you know, you're not getting together. You got a constant daily reinforcement when we're getting together. Now that obviously there's no guarantees. The fans thing, that's something that I think the administration is going to have to decide on. The bottom line for us is we want to be able to play the games. Where there's been kids that have put in the number of hours is fairly countless for our kids, and I think they would understand how this is teetering on a situation that if we don't take care of each other and we don't take care of the protocols, you know, we'll be paused and potentially not, you know, able to play and miss a game or miss a contest. So we're, you know, I think you know, the constant reinforcement of if we want this to go, we have to do it the right way. If we want the weight room to go out the door, it's got to be done the right way, which we've been doing since June and not had any issues. There's been issues of kids having, you know, outside of it in being traced that way, but not through lifting weights, not through our contact days where we had 180 kids participating in those contact days. But again, this is not just lip service. We're talking about it, both from a health and safety standpoint, but also from the standpoint that, hey, if we don't do a good job, we're not going to have a team. You know, if we don't look at how we're grouping kids, if we don't look at, you know, we potentially could, you know, roll into whatever game and be missing a large group of kids that are pretty important, besides the most obvious thing, which is the pandemic and other people being hurt by it. So, you know, I would say this, Dave, we do a great job, I think, communicating how important it is and almost taking that team aspect like we do in a number of other things and making that part of our you know, daily announcements and how we handle things. And I think the kids realize that as well.
If we would,
I don't know if I didn't have an answer for the fans, but I think that's going to be, you know, kind of discussed by the administrations and how they want to handle fans. If it's, you know, via, you know, kind of some of the streams or whatever, that's one thing. I mean, those are all options. The biggest option for us is to be able to get the kids to be able to play.
I guess my last question would be regarding this. If we would allow a team to go outside the county to practice, how many of other teams are going to request that same thing? No?
You know, when we met as
it could happen, it couldn't happen, it might not be feasible for any other team to do that. And so, okay.
I think there was 11 teams or 12 teams that are doing the spring alternative, and virtually every single team said that if the next order doesn't allow, they were going to find a place to practice, you know, a couple of times a week, you know, obviously with limited time, but they were going to, you know, every single school mentioned that they were going, you know, DeForest, Monona Grove, across the board. And I think the athletic directors, Aaron was in on the meeting with us. Most of them concurred with that they were going to be looking for another option to allow their kids to be able to practice, you know, in particular with that safety component, and being able to do things properly. So I would say almost all of them.
Has any team actually set that up yet?
I think there's a little bit of a race going on right now. If we don't get that order changed, where are we going to be able to do this? Because there's, number one, grass fields. Teams outside our county aren't going to want us in March tearing up their grass fields. I'm certain of that. So, you know, then we're looking at, you know, we've got a form that has every turf field in Dane County or outside the county that it's near, like Lodi and Fall River for us, like Lake Mills for Monona Grove. And we're trying to find some times there. But again, my thought on that, Sauk Prairie, is, the times we would get to be on their fields might be 7 or 8 o'clock at night, if they have some other activities. So I think there's some issues with that. Now, that being said, and it's like I talked to Mr. Gutenberg, I believe that we could probably accomplish a lot of what we're talking about, because we usually use shields and dummies or pads. We masked up those kids in contact day. We could probably get it done in a parking lot. You know what I mean? We're not taking kids to the ground, in particular after that first couple of weeks. You kind of, there's a whole progression that we teach, and it's kind of a step-by-step thing. And as we go, it's more of a fit position rather than a complete, kind of collision type thing. So there's a progression, I think, that would allow us not to necessarily even do it. I mean, honestly, my wife and myself are considering a romantic drive around the Dane County border, looking for parks and fields. So if you see me driving around, I'm not lost, but we're looking for a space that we might be able to get into, to bring our team to just work through these drills, because I don't even know if we need a turf field. We just need some place that has some space, and we're able to do some of those fundamental things. So that hopefully answers your question. But yeah, most of them are there, and I think the field availability might be an issue.
Yeah, let me jump in. I think I want to follow up on what Brian, I think you asked. I think part of your question, if I'm understanding it right, Brian, is if all of our sports have unique characteristics to them. Obviously, football brings its own uniqueness because of the close proximity of just being able to line up your line, to be able to do some of these things, to even get close to some of the type of things you do on the field and get ready for competition. I think your question also, Brian, was like, I'm just going to pick on volleyball, lacrosse, and soccer, is if football went out of the county to practice for a day or two during the week, I think, Brian, your question is that going to precipitate in the other sports like volleyball, soccer, lacrosse, for example, to also want to request that? And not that we're trying to just get an idea of the scope of what we're trying to deal with.
Yeah, that was my question, because it will be a financial issue too when we start having to send people out, and liability, and so I know that will come up as a full board meeting.
And I know Ann and Dave, you already spoke to it a little bit, but are you looking at, if that were allowed through like football, that you'd want to do that for your sport as well, Ann?
I don't think it's necessary for us. I think we can break down the game well enough just to keep it at 10 kids on the court. And I'm already kind of processing splitting all of our teams in half as it is, so that they're going to be practicing on their own court. So I think I can be creative in working those pods within our roster to keep those girls separated and still accomplish what I think we need to accomplish. So I don't feel as though volleyball needs to go anywhere. We just need to find a gym maybe for the first couple of days, until the field house is done. That's my only concern about location.
How about soccer and lacrosse, just to get a perspective?
Yeah, for soccer, there's not a need for us to leave the county to do our practices. I think we can accommodate things nicely, on the field and the facilities that we have available to us.
Thank you.
Tim and John are not in the meeting, our lacrosse coaches. At least I don't see them on the list. And I'll just have to go off of brief conversations we've had. They haven't brought that up, and it's similar to kind of what Dave brought up. Lacrosse, along with like soccer, is, there is some contact in the sport, but if you're doing the sport correctly, there shouldn't be contact. You should be, jumping into those passing lanes. You should be spaced out. So I don't know that they would necessarily be looking to get outside of the county to practice. But again, that's based off of a really brief conversation with the coaches. So I would have to revisit with them.
Aaron, let me ask you a question you and I discussed a couple hours ago. There's been a lot of legislative action, orders from the governor with regards to mask mandates. And obviously that's been a really important mitigation effort for us as a school and as our activities go forward, particularly if the board is being asked to look at participation outside of counties that may not have, probably don't have as strong of ordinances that we have here in Dane County. What do you see from, and I'd ask you to see if you could get a hold of WIAA, if they kind of had views on how they look at mask requirements for sports in the absence of a statewide mandate, and also just kind of the thoughts with regards to that being really a very important critical piece to any of our programs being able to compete and move forward. So were you able to find out anything in the short time that I gave you before this meeting?
Yeah, so I spoke to Tom Shafransky. He's one of the associate directors up at the WIA this afternoon. And what he told me is that the WIA, at the last Board of Control meeting, the Board of Control did pass a resolution requiring masks for all indoor competitions. They do not have language on outdoor sports at this time. But it's definitely something that their administrative staff is constantly reviewing. But it would have to be a Board of Control decision, and they meet again at the end of February. Speaking, and I sent out a message to just the rest of the Badger Conference, and I can say just based on who's responded, Monroe, Baraboo, Sauk Prairie, Fort Atkinson, Portage, DeForest, Oregon, Watertown, Beaver Dam, Stoughton, Mount Horeb, Reedsburg, MG have all said they would continue requiring masks regardless of any change to the state mask mandate. So I think what you're seeing is, one, the WIA would continue for sure as is with indoor sports having a mask. And a review of their rules for outdoor sports. And then pretty much a fairly overwhelming group of the Badger Conference would continue to require masking for practicing and competitions.
Yeah, and I know that there's been some things that you've done before we've done competitions with other teams where there's an agreement of some of the protocols. I guess from my perspective, and I think I can speak for our committee and our board, that the masking requirement will be kind of that's going to be a requirement in order to be able to compete. So if we're walking into another community that we're competing against and there's not students wearing masks, that's going to be a problem, I think, for us. So I just want to make sure that that's pretty open and clear. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you, Aaron, and just want to make sure, and I'm posing that to our coaches, do any of our coaches see that as problematic for your sports? Now, obviously, Kayla and swimming, when the kids are in the water, they're not masked, but then immediately when they're getting out, they are. But is there any issues that anybody sees if that requirement is put forward, that the other team and the place where you go has to follow that requirement? Anybody see that as problematic, Jen?
I guess the only thing I would say is if they don't train masked running a competitive 2 mile, things like that. I mean, if they train that way, but we would probably just have to make sure we only go to meets at schools that have been training that way, essentially. Although in cross country, I know they were able to remove their masks at a certain point. But I don't know with us being on the same oval if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I could just speak to that a little bit. For in the fall for the outdoor sports, in terms of what was required or not required by the WIA, while in competition, for outdoor sports, this is that I'm just referring to, they did not need to wear, they weren't requiring masks, but anytime you were not in competition, the requirement was to be masked. So for cross country, once they got sort of the 1 minute warning at the starting line, they could take off their masks at that time. And then once they crossed the finish line, they were the expectation or the regulation was to be masked again. So, and like I said, I touched on there before, the WIA hasn't updated or changed any of their guidance, but they regarding outdoor sports, but it is going to be reviewed. And so we may see a change in their guidance for outdoor sports, but they're indoor sports. It's, you're masked up. If you've watched any of our wrestlers or basketball players, they're all wearing masks while they're indoors competing. And that's,
When are they going to review that order? The WIA, sorry.
Well, their next Board of Control meeting is the end of February, so it won't be until then, because that would have to be a Board of Control decision for them. That the Board of Control is basically their version of a school board. They're the ones that can actually make those decisions. So they've got about another 2 weeks, 3 weeks before they'll actually have that meeting.
So Randy, if you're looking for further comment, from the sports, I mean, certainly, our preference, especially with soccer being an outdoor sport and, kind of the data that supports whether or not, there's, transmission or anything like that in the nature of the sport. Obviously, to me, the data suggests that, masks would not, be necessary. But however, if the requirement is that we have to wear masks, and based on what Aaron was naming as the schools who also have a mask policy, that's basically all the schools that we'd be playing anyway. As I understand right now, there's roughly 9 or 10 different games that we've got scheduled. All of them are with Badger Conference schools, and I believe all of them are on the list that Aaron was mentioning. So as long as there's parity across both teams, then I don't see it being an issue, although certainly our preference would be to not have that limitation. But we would follow the science and what the recommendation would be, or the requirements, I should say.
And I think I would also look at whatever's, and I think we've looked at what some of the requirements are that come out of our public health department too. There's going to be some modifications that could come. I don't know if that will be one of them, but certainly they have had different views on outdoor and indoor activities.
Yeah, and maybe just to clarify, I mean, I just don't see it as a physical impediment for soccer. Obviously it's not preferred given how much breathing is involved. But I don't see it as a physical impediment, and we can manage if that's the case.
Yeah. And track and field, Jen, I guess that's one I would defer to have a little bit more thought on. I don't know how that plays forward, if it's similar to how they did cross country. I mean, that's a piece that I think we may have to have a little bit more info.
I think you've seen that, our board has been pretty aggressive on opening up the school as much as possible within Dane County and opening up sports as much as possible. So unfortunately, we do have a tight time frame here with February. So I'm going to say a couple things that, believe me, I'm not advocating for, but I want the potential, because I don't want to have to delay another meeting and have somebody miss a window of when their competition might start. And so the one thing the medical committee has said multiple times is about the extracurricular activity outside of the sport being the biggest problem for transmission. And that includes both the players and the spectators. So when we look at that type of an issue, obviously our biggest fear, well, my personal biggest fear is that a sport gets some cases in it because the students were, they did the sport and then they went out to dinner right afterwards with their parents, and a bunch of them. We've already had one sport affected by that. What I would not want to have happen is then those players come back into the high school and start causing classes to be shut down because of too much spread. So looking at that issue, would you see a problem with us not only saying we would limit any spectators within Dane County, but do you think there'd be a huge pushback if we tried to limit spectators going out of county or parents going out to practices outside of county in order to stop that spread from coming back into the community. If that makes sense.
From our point, I don't think there'd be a problem. I think that, I can't speak for all the parents, but if we have a stream situation, we're talking about either being able to play or not play at this point. So the game is more important than all that other stuff. And again, eat, meet, and greet are the ways that people have contacted the virus. Eat, meet, and greet. And obviously, I don't think any of that stuff would be part of the equation. So in terms of educating and mitigating this situation. So if it comes down to, are we playing or is there fans? So that, with the streaming, I've been watching our winter teams and whatnot on that. So I obviously it's tough for the parents, but if that's the deal, that's the deal. We want to play football.
Yeah, I guess my thought is whether they are mandatory and have to take the bus up, take the bus back, they can still go out to eat here.
Yeah.
So we can't control what's going to happen in the family. So I think we have to look at within the bounds of the sport and the district when they are in our hands, where, what we're doing.
I just know Dr. Branham brought up that the vast majority of all the cases he's seen around sports are purely about that. And the last thing we want to do is start closing the high school.
And I think, Aaron, just from your experience working with the other ADs, I believe that majority of I think all the places that we've been participating, what we're seeing around with the other districts that we are partnering with, they have limitations on spectators. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we have just going to the winter sports, we have yet to go anywhere where they've said, general admission. The two most common admissions at a sporting event for us is 2 guests per athlete, or no visiting guests at all. Like that have kind of been the two situations for our winter sporting events. We have a couple, I have a freshman, Coach Grabarski's got a couple high schoolers. So we've kind of been in that where we've either had to stream it or it's just been one of us being able to go to that event so far. Talking about the alternate fall season, that's basically all Badger Conference schools. And again, right now, what we're looking at is potentially having to play all those outside of Dane County, whether that's a volleyball match or a soccer game. And we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning, those athletic directors that are in that scheduling group. And one of our topics of discussion is sort of game management policies, to have some agreement. So that way, if our soccer team's going to play, for example, Monroe, down in Monroe, it's the same set of rules as if we were going to, we were at Lodi using their soccer field to host Monona Grove. So that way parents have some semblance or some standardization for the season. So they're not constantly wondering from game to game what exactly is allowed or not allowed. So yeah, we are discussing as a group, at least for that alternate fall season, because that's kind of just within Dane County schools. So we can really lock that down to have some unified rules regarding guests or fans at all.
I want to make a motion because at least on this part that we make a motion to allow the fall to spring sports to participate in out of county competition. All right. And that's it at this point. Because again, the order is going to change next week. We are probably going to have a meeting. We have to be fluid about this, but at least we can say, that we're allowing the fall to spring sports to play competition outside of Dane County. And then we will figure out when that order comes out, how that practice is going to look.
Brian, you also want to include the traditional spring sports. Fall to spring are those ones, and then the traditional spring are like softball, baseball, track, and other kind of things.
Yeah, at this point, I'm fine with any of our remaining co-curriculars participating outside of Dane County for competition. So I guess that would be my first motion, and to take that to the full board for consideration on Monday.
Would you be amenable to amending it to say that because we don't know what's going to happen, that there should be the required masking as the fall sport, the winter sports act, and some limitation on spectators?
You want to write that in separate?
No, just put it in your motion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with adding masking as it stands now.
I think adding the masking, and potentially you could consider that with regards to some of the order pieces as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to keep changing on us right away.
Yeah,
I'll second that.
Judy, are you on there?
You're blocked, Judy.
I'm with you. I've been following.
Right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So 3-0 to move to full board.
Can I clarify that real quick? So there's 3 parts to it. One is to allow all of our remaining activities to be able to go outside of Dane County to compete. Yeah. Number 2 is that there would be adherence to the masking. What's that tied to? Is that just a general statement, everybody masks, or is it with regard to relation to an order or relation to recommendations on WIAA? How do you want?
Why don't we put it based on the recommendations that as they exist now, and if there's a change to them, then we have to deal with that.
So change to either the public health order or WIAA. We can work within those parameters. And then the third one is with regards to, and I think it's kind of what Aaron was stating, that we would work within the with whatever teams we are competing with to make sure that we have procedures that deal with safety of numbers for similarly to what Aaron said, either limited participation in spectators or visitors not being able to have. So either one of those, is that amenable? Okay. So those 3 things.
Did you get that?
Aye.
Aye.
Whatever it is.
All right, 3-0. Okay. All right. So any questions, I guess, from the coaches on that at this point?
Yeah,
the practice schedules and stuff are going to change due to orders next week, and we will definitely be looking at that, figure out how we.
Hey guys, I have one question quick. Does that, the way it's reading right now and what you just said, and I'm cutting out, so I'm not hearing it as well as I should be in here, but is that saying that we're okay to go outside to practice as well?
No.
Now, obviously, because that's the deal for us. You understand that?
I think what Brian is saying is let's see what the order states.
Okay.
Coming out next week, let's see what the order provides us. If it doesn't provide you what you need in order to practice, we can come back and revisit that. Is that what you're asking, Brian?
Yep.
So for right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I think for generally what I'm seeing is everybody but football right now, it gives you the latitude to do what you need to do to move your program forward. Pat, what you're needing is to see what other latitude you might get through that public health order. If it doesn't come through there, then we're going to have to bring some things back to revisit that and discuss.
Yep.
Understood. Thank you.
Aaron, I would just like to ask for the board meeting, it might be helpful if you have a calendar of where everybody's practice and competition starts, so we can make sure we don't miss a deadline. If we have to schedule an extra meeting or something to get in front of it, we can.
Sounds good.
No problem.
Thanks.
Any questions regarding from the spring coaches? I know that
Tammy,
baseball,
Jen,
track.
Spencer.
Nothing.
Betsy.
Not really. I think my parents would probably be happy if you told them that they can't come and it's live streamed, so they could tune out. But, you know, I'm probably alone on that one with my team.
Was there others? Anybody else have anything else?
I was just gonna say, this is Betsy with boys golf. I just wanted to just kind of let you know the history that with golf, the fact that the summer Wisconsin PGA had the summer tournaments for boys and girls. And, you know, they made some great changes with and set up some protocols to really make things go off. You know, they had tee times and tried to avoid, you know, spectators and things like that. So we had a lot of success through that. And then I'm the assistant girls coach for Waunakee for the golf. And, you know, we had a great season and no problems. And Paul Miller did a great job, you know, setting up practices and, you know, just making sure that we took care of all the social distancing and things. But as you know, golf is just naturally a socially distant sport. So for us going into the spring season, you know, I think we've learned a lot from fall, and I think we shouldn't have any problems at all.
Good.
All right, thanks, Betsy.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second. Second.
Thank you for coming. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.